Hi, everybody. This is Jill, the private investigator, back again. I hope everyone had a wonderful Christmas and they got everything they wanted from Santa Claus. I know I did. I had a good Christmas. I wanted to come on and do a video today since it is the day after Christmas and it is the 24th anniversary of the death of JonBenet Ramsey. I have followed this case for 24 years. So I've heard so much, I've read so much that I feel like there's not one more ounce of space left in my head to put anything else sometimes. But I want to just talk about how I looked at the case, I guess, how I looked at the evidence and what I want to say what I believe happened. There's a couple areas that I go, wait, but there are so many that weigh so heavy with me on one side that I guess I would have to say, yes, I do believe I think I know who might have done it. Remember, this is all allegedly. No one has been convicted. No one has been charged. 24 years, still an open case, cold case. And, it's all alleged. I don't know this. These are just my personal beliefs. So, some of it I will tell you. If it's fact, I will let you know in the source that it came from and link it down below. Now, I'm sure everyone is familiar with this story. I don't know if I should really go over the, front to finish kind of summary of the story because I think everyone pretty much knows what happened. 6-year-old little girl, young pageant child of a pretty well-to-do family in Colorado, Boulder, Colorado, and she was murdered Christmas night sometime in the night in her own home and found in her basement later on that day when her parents had called police. So I want to point out some of the things that make me believe what I do and just maybe raise some questions or get a conversation started. Maybe you've got a different perspective on it. I would love to hear it. Now, John Ramsey is remarried. Patsy Ramsey passed away of ovarian cancer in 2006. In 2011, John Ramsey remarried. I think I say her last name right. I might be messing this up all to pieces. But Jan Russo, I believe her name is. That's how it's spelt anyway. It looks like it's spelt. So he remarries Jan Russo in 2011. And he is still married to her. They live in Charlevoix, Michigan, where him and Patsy had a vacation home. And that was actually searched a couple of times after all this happened. John Ramsey also ran on the Republican ticket for the Michigan House of Representatives. And he ran in 2004. He did not win, obviously. And during that time, the mayor gave a statement when questioned by the local news there what he thought of John Ramsey running. And I want to read what he says specifically, and I think it's actually perfect for this situation. He says that some remain skeptical. There's still uncertainty and people are disturbed about some of the evidence that came out in the investigation. Wow. That was a bold statement, actually, by the mayor to make at the time, especially for someone who is running for office. I understand if he's running on a Democratic ticket, but ouch, that one hurt a little bit, huh? But I guess we'll just start diving into the pieces that drive drive me crazy and make me go, look, everybody, aren't you looking at this? How are you not seeing, I guess, what I see? So we'll start out with the ransom note. I tend to call it the manifesto instead of a ransom note. This ransom note was so ridiculously long. Now, I know at one point, and this wasn't too many years ago, I had read that it was the longest ransom note ever. It's pretty difficult to achieve. So let's just start by saying I think that ransom note was a red herring. I believe that it was all part of the staging that happened after. So I think that this was all just part of it. And I have so many questions when it comes around that. But the staging, this was all during what I like to call panic hour after it happened. The panic that I'm sure had set in, and they started, or he, I believe, just my opinion, that it was Patsy. And there's many reasons why, and I'm going to tell you. Okay, now there's the staging of this note. And, like I said, it's written during the panic cover-up hour. And that's why there were two notes, because they were in such a panic, I'm sure, that they messed up or something clicked in their head and they decided to change how they worded it. So they started over again. So they dismiss the one ransom note and decide to write another one that, like I said, is ridiculous. 2 full pages, just about long. And the first note, like I said, panic, and the second one was so long, it was staging to give you the narrative, I guess is what I'm trying to say. They set that out there to set the stage, like a playbill, I guess, in a play, and you set the stage for what's getting ready to happen and who's playing along in it. So I don't know. I just found that to be just a red herring in part of the staging. Here's the narrative. Here's the story I want you to go with. So the writer of the note, considering the dramatic flair I found in this long manifesto, it goes back to, it sounds like Patsy, who was known for that dramatic flair. She was known for being a little eccentric and a little extra. So that ransom note makes a whole bunch of sense with her being the author, why the movie quotes that were in it, and oddly enough, movies that, that they watched and had in their home and movie posters. So I think that it was a panic and a glance up at the poster. You're thinking of, what would someone do in this position? Obviously, I believe, I don't know this, but I believe Patsy Ramsey looked back at movies for her knowledge and her guidance, I guess, to steer everyone and herself, navigate them through this craziness, these crazy waters that they're muddying up. So they write this note to explain it, is what I believe. Now, also, who is the writer in the family? Patsy is. She has a bachelor's degree from WVU. So she loves to write, and that's her thing, journalism. So a bachelor's in journalism, and she tends to have a dramatic flair. Now we've got a 2-page ransom note that is dramatic, to say the least, with movie quotes and such in it. So, yeah, again, it seems like it's Patsy. There's so many questions throughout this case, and the answer ends up being Patsy, sadly. I hate to say that, but it is. Now, with the ransom note, even Chief Beckner had spoke on Patsy's behavior when she was asked and when they were obtaining these writing samples to compare to the ransom note. He made mention of her odd behavior during that time. And I think that just kind of adds to everything else. It's another piece to the puzzle that is going to paint a picture for you. So before I get into the handwriting samples of the ransom note and the results, I wanted to ask everyone another question. How, referring to the ransom note, how did this intruder know which staircase they used? There were 2 staircases in the home. Now, they had the main, bigger, wooden staircase in the front of the home, and then they also had a smaller staircase, a spiral staircase, and I will link it in, or not link it, but I'll try to throw a picture up. But there was the small spiral staircase in the back. How did this intruder know which set of steps to put the letter on for them to see it and read it? How did they know it would be seen there, is my question. So that makes me wonder, is that a second nature type thing? Where they just instinctively put it on the set of steps that they use because they know they use them. We don't know that. So there's a few things that I found that seem second nature in this case. Someone in the home had done something you wouldn't normally do if you were intruding in someone else's home. So there's a few of them that I'll point out along the way. So yeah, I just want to know, how did he know which staircase to use? You've got your front staircase, you've got your back one, and he knows exactly which one. Guess where the pen and paper came from? Again, we can answer Patsy. Patsy seems to be the answer for a lot of these questions. Speaking of second nature, not only was it Patsy's pad and pen that was used to write the ransom note, the intruder didn't bring it with him. That's so bizarre. Oh, wow, so bizarre, another crazy thing. But anyway, the intruder goes as far as to put the pad of paper back where he got it from in the drawer and put the pen back in the cup. What? Holy crap, are you kidding me? So the intruder had manners, cleaned up after himself, didn't he? I mean, this is just so bizarre to me. It seems second nature, something that someone in the home would do. They would put the pen and paper up, not an intruder. An intruder's just going to leave it lay, maybe even just toss it on the table. Who knows? But I just don't see him neatly putting everything back. Another thing, the fingerprints on it. What is the typical answer we've been getting so far? Patsy Ramsey. So, again, Patsy Ramsey. What is happening? So kind of this intruder to put that away, but yet they killed your daughter. I don't understand. Who are you trying to sell that to? And also, Patsy gave 3 writing samples. Let's start getting into that maybe a little bit. Patsy gave 3 handwriting samples that came back inconclusive. Now, I will put up a picture because the woman, the handwriting expert that had, I guess, analyzed Patsy's handwriting compared to the ransom note was on an episode of 2020. And if I'm not mistaken, her name is Sing Wong. And she found over 200 similarities from her writing to in the ransom note, and she examined 100 samples. So over half of them, even someone that was independently hired, comes outside for 2020 and said that there were over half were similarities. Now, there's been many people to look over her handwriting, and a lot of it, most of them, should I say, the majority, comes back as inconclusive, or they think that Patsy wrote it. One other thing that I wanted to talk about was John Ramsey knowing where to go to when she was found. Explain to me, out of all those rooms, was it 13 or 15? I think it was 15, 13 rooms in this house that they did not find her. And how did he go to her and find her right off the bat is what I'm getting at. How did he know out of this big home to zero in and go straight to a room that some people didn't even know existed and find her right off the rip? He found her straight to it. Now, how did they not find her before? My daughter, when she was 3 years old, I could not find her. I went around my house and I screamed and I yelled and I screamed and I yelled for her because I had panicked at that point. I cried and yelled, had my cordless phone, my landline at the time. I went outside thinking, did she slip past me? I went outside screaming and yelling and freaking out, looking everywhere, and I came back through the house and tried to check for any place, that she could hide, where any place her little body would fit in. I ended up finding her in one of those baby doll rocker beds, the little flimsy wooden ones. I found her curled up, just gone to the world asleep in that thing. And it scared the life out of me. But my point is, how do you not search every square inch of that house before police come? That's another piece to the puzzle, another red flag. How does that happen? I can't imagine being so frightened that my daughter was gone that I wouldn't look, just out of some kind of glimmer of hope, something to hold on to, just you're reaching at that point. You're reaching at anything and everything. So how in the world did they not know she was not in the house with them? That's another thing that just makes me think, yeah, that was an inside job. Again, my opinion, just my opinion. How did they not know? And how did John know all of a sudden, after supposedly searching the home, hours going by with law enforcement there and plenty of friends and a pastor? How in the world did it take hours to find her, first of all? And then when you looked, you were able to go straight to her. No, I'm sorry, but that story stinks, and I'm not believing it. I want to clear the suitcase up thing right now, too. The suitcase story drives me bonkers. The suitcase underneath the window in the basement. I'm sure anyone that's familiar with the family with the case is familiar with this. It has been said so many times that I believe it has convinced everyone that it's truth. that this suitcase was used as some kind of ladder for the intruder to get in and out of the Ramsey home through the window with the cobweb that wasn't broken. But anywho, the suitcase. That suitcase was moved and put there, admittedly, by Fleet White. Fleet White said that when him and John went to the basement, when John found JonBenet, when they first went into the basement, he said that he was looking at glass during the time John was going off to the room to find JonBenet. He saw glass and noticed the window was broken and was just kind of making note of it and looking around for glass because it was unlatched but shut. And there was a hole about the size of a softball, I guess you could put your hand through maybe to unlatch it, what John had done the previous summer, I believe. So Fleet White was looking for glass, larger pieces of glass, wondering if it was something recent or if it was where John had done it and the glass had been cleaned up other than some shards. So he was looking for big chunks of glass. He moved that suitcase looking for the glass. So the picture that you see of the suitcase underneath the window, that's already been moved by Fleet White. That suitcase was not originally sitting there. So it wasn't used as a stool or a ladder or anything like that. It was innocently moved there as he was looking for bigger pieces of glass. So I wanted to get that taken care of because I hear that and the scuff marks on the walls, and no, that's not the case either. And how did they slip through that window? Let's just go ahead and say, undetected, and they didn't even break the spider web. I mean, it wasn't the Globetrotters and it wasn't Houdini. Also, the snow. That's another controversial topic. Some people have claimed there was no snow that morning when the police say there were no footprints around the home. From what I understand now, that the police officers, the detectives have said that originally there was some on the ground that early in the morning when they first got there. But through the morning sunshine and stuff had started to melt away, so there wasn't snow to see footprints in or anything. But originally there was earlier that morning, and there were no marks or any identifiable marks that would suggest any kind of foul play coming from the outside in the home. Everything suggests it happened in the home. Now, the thing is, I hear people say that Burke did it, and I'm a little on the fence with that. I feel there's so much with Patsy, everything just, Patsy. She was under a lot of stress, getting ready to turn 40 years old, and they were flying out at, 5 o'clock in the morning, getting up to fly out to Michigan the day that they discovered JonBenet, and staying there for a vacation with his kids to spend Christmas, and then off to a Disney cruise. So she had bogged herself down with all of these events and all these parties for Christmas and the tours and the craziness, the lights that she did. And so she got bogged down by this. She was turning 40, and I don't know, maybe it's hard to say what was going on, but I think she was very stressed out by a lot of things. And what I believe happened is it caused Patsy, I think JonBenet wet the bed. And it caused Patsy to accidentally hurt her. I think she kind of snapped and accidentally did it, because I believe that her grieving is very true, or was very true and real. It seemed very genuine. So I believe that she truly grieved this child, and I don't think that she meant to hurt this child at all. I believe she truly loved her. So That's another little piece I wanted to throw out there that was controversial and gets, talked about quite a bit as if it's fact, and a lot of things they're not. So I just wanted to let you know that there was snow originally in the morning. Now comes the controversy, the DNA. Now, there is so much, I've got so many notes on it. If you guys hear me flipping my papers, I really apologize. There's so many notes I've taken on the DNA section. I'm in the camp of it's not a DNA case. I just don't believe it is for a gazillion reasons, and I plan to list for you. But I just don't believe that it's DNA. They're not going to find the killer with DNA. Detective Steve Thomas, that was on the case, has said that there were 6 partial, badly degraded profiles of DNA. 6. The Globetrotters did not break in, I promise. They didn't do this. 6. Now, the one that Mary Lacey exonerated the Ramsey family on in 2008, it turned out to be two profiles mixed together. So I'm already questioning A, their science, and B, for her to exonerate them when she doesn't even know for a fact it's a DNA case. It's been proven that these underwear that she had on that had never been washed before, pulled directly out of the pack that was still hanging out of the drawer in her bathroom, had, I'm sure, multiple profiles of DNA and probably partial badly degraded DNA from the time lapse, how much, because it's touch DNA. So, how much touched and how many people it traveled through to get there, etc. So there are too many profiles to begin with for me to say, yeah, definitely, yeah, you got your killer with that DNA profile. There are way too many profiles. Second of all, the housekeeper testified to their hygiene. And I hate saying this, but she said that they were not the cleanest people with their personal hygiene in the world. And that, especially like JonBenet, it's hard to tell how long it had been since that child washed her hands. It's hard to tell how long it had been since Patsy had washed her hands, and John, and Burke. Now, all of them are going to multiple parties through the holiday season with lots of people. I was going to say plenty, but lots of people that they're interacting with. Touching, shaking hands, hugging, picking up something that they've touched. There are just so many ways. Now, I know the argument is going to come, but it was on her long johns or it was on her underwear. Do you know how easy that would be for that child to go into the bathroom to pee once, have dirty little grubby hands like kids do, and if the hygiene was poor on top of that, you can imagine, and she goes to grab her underwear, goes to grab her pants and pull them up. Well, there you go. She's got it on her hands. There's where you're getting your touch DNA. And if she has it under her nails, it just all makes sense to me that she has spread this onto herself, more than likely, or Patsy, who, I don't know if I should say allegedly, just my opinion, but I believe that Patsy may have also had something on her hands when she put it on, possibly. And when she pulled them up, she got it on her. I mean, there's just way too many possibilities to be able to say, yeah, that's it. There's just too many profiles also. So I do not believe that it was a DNA case. Now, after Mary Lacy had exonerated the Ramseys in 2008, now it was reported in I want to get this right, Jamestown Sun. Jamestown Sun. It was on jamestownsun.com, an article. And I will try to link that below so you can read it. But it had reported that the Denver TV station KUSA and the Boulder Daily Camera, which is their local newspaper there in Boulder, obviously, reported that the DNA report Lacy cited when exonerating them was less definitive than she stated. The unidentified DNA they were referring to was actually DNA of 2 people. So, how is it a DNA case and how can you exonerate them? If you don't even know if it's a DNA case, how can you exonerate them on DNA? That just doesn't make any sense to me. And the spreading and the touch, it was also touch DNA. That could be touching something. You come behind me, touch it, you've got me and who I've touched. And it's just that, snowball effect. So I wanted to touch on the DNA some, get into it. I guess I'll try to get into it a little bit more because it's just such a controversial thing. And everyone seems to get so angry over it. I don't know. Maybe I'll just leave it at that. I think I made my point. It's not a DNA case. I didn't finish what I was saying as far as Burke goes. A lot of people have said that Burke did this. I don't think Burke did it. There are a couple things that make me raise an eyebrow. But there's a ton of stuff of Patsy, and just a couple of things of Burke. And one of them I found interesting was that Burke was cleared with his DNA in 1999. How in the world did Burke's DNA, and they determined it was a DNA case, before the family was exonerated? How did they exonerate Burke in 1999, but the rest of the family wasn't exonerated until 2008? That's something that made me raise an eyebrow with Burke. Another thing, I thought, if all these people, which I include Alex Hunter, of course, their attorney Lynn Wood, and quite a few others in there. If these people knew, or what would make them cover up for this family? If someone in the home did it, what would make them cover this up? Obviously money, of course, which is a huge possibility. But also the next possibility would be to cover for a child. Because, you do things, especially as a 9-year-old, that you don't think about the consequences. You don't think past your nose. And, hindsight's 20/20 for an adult. Imagine what it is for a 9-year-old. So I can see them protecting a 9-year-old, plus not knowing that, or knowing that he could not be prosecuted because of his age. They also knew that. So the only reason I could see, I guess, a bunch of people doing that and covering up for a family is for money or to cover for a child that they knew possibly had done it accidentally, and more than likely he didn't mean to kill his sister. I can't imagine a 9-year-old that would. There are a few, but so they probably wanted to protect his future. So those are two possibilities. So that's another one of Burke that makes me wonder. Now, the third, was his interview with Dr. Phil. In his interview with Dr. Phil, he admitted to getting up that night out of bed and leaving his room and going and looking downstairs at his gifts and playing with them. Yikes. Burke got up. Uh-oh. Makes me wonder, Also, I think the pineapple, I think Patsy probably fed maybe Burke that, and JonBenet ate it too with him, or she made it for JonBenet. But my opinion again, I think Patsy played stupid on the pineapple part. I think she knew exactly where it came from, because the intruder didn't bring a pineapple but forgot to bring his note. So Patsy definitely fed the pineapple. Now, the fibers on Patsy's sweater, or from Patsy's sweater, should I say, her sweater blazer. Now, she lied, I believe. She said that she bought her friend the exact same jacket. And I think that was just a thing of, well, she came over to my house because I believe they've been together during Christmas. It was one of her friends where they had gone to their home, or they had come to the Ramsey home. And she said that she bought her the same exact sweater. Maybe, probably not, but maybe. I think that was just to muddy the waters again. Now, they found 4 fibers. I shouldn't say they were from Patsy's sweater. That's wrong. They were consistent with the fibers, color and all, from Patsy's sweater. 4 of them on the duct tape, on the sticky side, over her mouth, over JonBenet's mouth, on the sticky side. Now, there were also fibers that were the same and consistent with the color and all, consistent with the tape fibers found in Patsy's paint tray, which was not far outside of that room where JonBenet died, on, I guess, that rug or piece of carpet that she was on. And so the fibers were not only 4 of them inside the tape of the tape over her mouth, same as the paint tray, and also in the garrote, in the knot tied in the garrote. There was also consistent fibers with Patsy's sweater. Again, the question to the answer is Patsy, okay? Now, Patsy admitted that she had never worn that sweater down there in the basement. So she had never worn it down there to shed that many, as far as the paint tray, in the garrote, or on the tape on the inside of her mouth. So the fibers are consistent with, and the same color. I mean, the dye and stuff, it was, I guess there was no way of saying for sure, but it was a pretty daggone for sure. And, without it, I don't know. I guess they said it could be a huge possibility with, I guess, consistent. That's what I think in my mind anyway. So let's also talk about what was found in that cellar. I think those things also are very interesting and go back to Patsy. I don't know. It's such it's a hard subject with her because I want to get so angry with her, but I really don't think the woman did it on purpose. She's now gone on. She's now met her maker, so I guess she's dealt with her end of it. Now, the things found in the cellar. Burke's knife, his Swiss Army knife from the linen closet. Now, the housekeeper had just taken that knife away from him because he had learned to whittle, and I guess he was whittling everything in the house, and she was finding it all over. So she took his Swiss Army knife from him that he had been gifted. She put it up on top in a linen closet where the kids couldn't see it or play with it, and without their knowledge. But then let Patsy know that knife is up there. I took it from Burke, and this is why. Well, the knife ended up in that cellar. So this magician of an intruder, who has stayed 45 minutes to 2 hours, managed to write 1 2-page manifesto, started on one, messed it up, obviously, and didn't finish it, come in undetected, stayed that long, murdered their child, and, everything that transpired, and they also knew, you know what, Burke's Swiss Army knife, that would be great to cut this rope with, is in the linen closet. Patsy knew that. She knew where to go get that. Just like with the blanket JonBenet was wrapped up in. That was her favorite blanket. The housekeeper had changed her bedclothes because she had an accident in her bed again, and her favorite blanket was in the dryer. She told Patsy that blanket was in the dryer. She didn't tell the intruder. Nobody else knew that. Patsy knew that. And why would the intruder even have the peace of mind to want to put this child with her favorite blanket and go get it, take the time out to go get it and wrap her in it and put her in it? That falls more under filicide, is what that does. That is something that is kind of typical for parents, especially mothers, that have killed their children, and they even try to take care of them in death in this weird, sick way, and they will put them with their favorite things, or wrap them in their favorite blanket, with their favorite pillow, whatever it may have been. So it seems to be a common theme. Now, I'm not saying that's what happened. I'm saying that's a huge possibility, and I believe it probably did happen, and it's true in my eyes. Now, also her favorite nightgown, I believe it was a Barbie nightgown, a pink one. Her favorite nightgown was in there with her in the cellar. That was also in the dryer. How did the intruder know that? And how did the intruder know to go get it out the dryer and that it was her favorite? That's all coming from within. All of it's coming from within. The high-tech boot print that they found. My cat sees something that's not there. I'm sorry. The high-tech boot print that they found. High-tech boots are very common with police officers. Now, it was said by Detective Thomas that there had been some of the police officers that were working on the street, on patrol, that had stopped by, to neck crane, I guess, and sightsee and gawk, and had probably gone in there and stepped in that powdery, dusty stuff that was on the floor that left the imprint. But they made such a huge deal out of these high-tech boots. That's a very common brand for police officers. That doesn't alarm me. It doesn't stick out to me. That seems pretty common that there would be boot marks from a police officer. I know that they checked the ones that they knew had come in there, but what about the ones that they didn't know had come in there? And I think that flashlight on the counter falls along the same lines. Nobody could identify the flashlight. They didn't know whose it was. At first, they thought maybe it was John Ramsey's, a gift. Well, then later, they didn't know whose it was. I'm going to say, with that kind of flashlight laying on or sitting on the kitchen counter like that, it more than likely came from a police officer that had been at the house, if it's not accounted for. If John can't remember if that's the exact one, because he said he can't tell for sure if it's the exact one that I believe his daughter or someone had gotten him for Christmas as a gift. So I think that fell along the same lines. But all of these things that were inside of this cellar, the answers are Patsy. It all goes back to Patsy. Now, I wanted to make mention of the cellar door. The cellar door closed only from the outside. There was a piece of wood that had just been screwed in, and they would twist the little rectangle piece of wood over, to keep the door from coming open. So this door was shut, and also the piece of wood had been flipped over and shut it. That to me again screams second nature, not an intruder. Why would an intruder care if the door was open? They're going to find her. She's in the house. And I don't know, just too many things seemed like something you would do in your own home. Putting things away, shutting doors, and, too much of knowing which staircase they went down. Too much of it says it was coming from within the house. What was the name of that scary movie, like back in the late 70s or early 80s? It scared me so bad as a kid. I think it was prank phone calls were coming into the house, and the babysitter was there at the house with the kids. The kids are sleeping. She called the operator and said, I keep getting these prank phone calls. She was scared. Finally, the operator called back and said, the phone calls are coming from within the house. Get out. And that's kind of like this. It's all coming from within the house. So if someone can point something out different, please do, if you can change my mind. But I think Patsy is more than likely our culprit here. There's just a couple more things that I want to touch on, and we'll go ahead and call this quits for the night. I hope you guys have stuck with me this long. But I wanted to make sure that I told you guys to go and look. I will link it down below. To go and look at Patsy Ramsey's police interview about the fibers from her sweater. I think that it's pretty telling, her answer, the way that she is stammering and just nonsense space talk is what I call it. People, I've heard them say word salad. And that's pretty much what she did. And I will link that down below for you to go and take a look at. It's pretty interesting seeing her explanation or what she has to say about the fibers from her sweater that were consistent. I wanted to speak very briefly about JonBenet's injuries, specifically her head injury. Now, in 2015, they had new revelations because Chief Beckner, the former Boulder, Colorado police chief, had done an interview with Reddit. It was a very, very telling interview. He spoke quite a bit. I don't want to say that he was unprofessional, but there is a line that he definitely danced around as far as the information that he gave out. But he said that the report showed it took 45 minutes to 2 hours for JonBenet's brain to swell to the point it was. If it was an intruder, The same intruder that did not bring his own ransom note, he had to write it on site with their pen and paper. It's a good thing they had a pen and paper handy for him to grab, or he may have just had to, I don't know, call the phone and leave a voicemail. I mean, I don't know. This is crazy. So there were 45 minutes to 2 hours for her brain to swell. That's an awful lot of time for an intruder to be comfortable in the home of a deceased, or what they I say deceased because they explained that with that kind of a head injury, her heart rate would have been so low that they probably wouldn't have been able to feel it by checking her pulse, because it would have been so faint, because she was fatally injured with that injury. But it was the strangulation that ultimately killed her. So we've got 45 minutes to 2 hours for that panic mode that set in, I believe, when the ransom note was written, because, there was no purpose in that ransom note other than the narrative. They were demanding money for something they didn't have, and they knew that would be found out pretty quickly, I'm sure, if it was an intruder. And they didn't, there was no other purpose. They didn't demand anything else. So, like I said earlier, red herring, definitely staging. So, but her injuries now, they said that what ultimately killed her was the strangulation. Now, they said she was strangled from behind on the piece of carpet outside of that door, the cellar door where she was found, and not too far outside of it. And, of course, where Patsy's paint tray is, but we'll get into that in a minute. So 45 minutes to 2 hours they've got to spend in this home. That's how long her brain had to swell. What intruder sticks around that long? Does anyone know of an intruder sticking around that long? Can they name anybody? I would be curious to know, because I've not been able to find one to date. One that has stayed 45 minutes to 2 hours without holding the family hostage, that is. So they do know now that the head injury was fatal. It would have killed her, but it did not. It was the strangulation. But the time is very crucial in my point of view, because it sets the stage of a person being in their family. Even if they were known to the family, they wouldn't have been comfortable in their home for 45 minutes to 2 hours. So I just wanted to touch on her injuries, just in that aspect. I know there were other injuries in other areas, and there's just so much debate going back and forth on what was current and what was prior, possibly. I don't know that I believe the prior. I think that it was done that time when she was murdered for staging purposes, kind of like the ransom letter. It was all over the place. Even the murder was all over the place. They couldn't even pick a way of how, they were going to kill her if they were an intruder. It's just scattered. Everything is, it's all scattered. So who's throwing the monkey wrench in here and scattering everything and muddying the waters? I think that it's pretty obvious who that is, and I think it's the Ramseys. I just don't know at what point John picked up on it and realized, in my point of view, in my belief, that Patsy did this. And just my belief, just my speculation and theory, that John, I want to know, what point did he know? Did she tell him automatically out of fear and looking for guidance and support? Or was it something that I personally believe that he put together on his own at some point? And I believe it was early that morning and probably before police arrived. What do you guys think? I'd kind of know what I believe in my heart. Tell me what you think. Maybe, I don't know, maybe between us we can figure it out. I want to do a video of looking at John and Patsy's speech in their very first interview they did with CNN 1 week after JonBenet had been murdered, and before they had spoken to police, which I find so, another thing that's so suspicious to me. Is another piece of the puzzle. But I would like to go back and look at their interviews, listen to their language, watch their body language, facial expressions, and do a video on that alone. I'd love to get into it on this. There's so much to get into on this case. You just have to keep unpacking and unpacking, and that's what I'm going to try to do. So I'm going to have to do it in, I guess, sections or chapters, episodes, whatever you want to call it. But yes, there will be a video. I'm going to go over that, and just to see if there's any truthfulness, deception, anything, what you're reading from, and maybe nothing. But I found something very interesting that I know I'd like to point out. One thing very specific, but there's many. So I will be doing a video on that shortly, probably tomorrow. I hate to flip-flop back and forth on you guys, but there was one thing that I forgot to mention when we were speaking, or I was speaking. I feel like I'm talking to someone. I guess I am. But when I was speaking about the fibers from Patsy's sweater, I meant to mention to you the interview that she did in April of, I wrote it down somewhere, 97. And I will try to put the transcript up here. If not, I will definitely link it below. And this is a portion of the interview where she is asked to explain the fibers from her sweater being in the paint tray on the tape and tied into the garrote. I think it's pretty telling, her stuttering, her stammering, and her explanation, answer, I guess you would say. So I will try to put that up, and so you guys can read the transcript of it, or I'll link it down below. But definitely something worth looking at. Now, one of the last things that I want to get into is the CNN interview. I want to go more in depth with it. The one that they did, I think it was like January 1st. It was a week after JonBenet had been murdered in 97. And they went to CNN instead of to the local police to speak to them first. And, just another, what? Type thing. You did what? So they went to CNN to be interviewed first. And I think that that is a very, very telling interview. I don't know if you guys have ever watched the Behavior channel. Those guys, they are so awesome. But they have taught me so much, and I have begged them to please look at this video. And in the comment section, I've run them crazy. They're experts. Their resumes are impeccable when it comes to body language and interrogation and stuff. So I would love for them to look at John and Patsy's interview 1 week after the murder before they spoke to police. There is one specific point in it I want to mention right now. I said I was going to make a video later of the body language and the speech pattern and all of that, the actual words said, a little bit later, probably tomorrow, the next day. But one thing in the CNN, the first interview in January, is Patsy's behavior when they ask her, what do you think should happen to the person who did this to your child? And instead of it striking a chord of assertiveness, anger, anything like that, she wilted. I mean, you could just see it on her, in her, everywhere. She began to cry. I mean, it made her break down like a shotgun. She just crumbled with that question. You can just see it on her. And I thought it was very, very interesting that that triggered her that bad. And again, my thinking is because I think that she did it. Now, one of the last things I'm going to leave you guys with, and it's more, I guess, of a question. Outside of, oh, I forgot, Patsy's clothing. We cannot forget Patsy wearing the same clothing. The next day she's in the exact same outfit because she was up all night staging and pacing and panicking and writing manifestos. In my opinion only, but, or allegedly, I don't know what to say, but this is what I believe. It may not be true, but this is what I believe. But I wanted to touch on something and ask you guys a question, but I just remembered her clothes, and I'm like, wait a minute, she had the same clothes on. So I had to bring that up because there's just so much of it. I could be here all night, picking out all of these details. They're endless to me. Now, one thing that I want to ask that I'm going to leave you guys with is, why do you think that once the grand jury convened in 1999, let me make sure what I'm saying here, 1999, Alex Hunter comes back to say that, I get, he pretty much lied. He did lie by omission, and he did lie. He was just in a very gray area there dancing around for a long time, and he didn't tell the truth. He made it seem as if the grand jury had not brought back an indictment, which in fact they had. And I am curious why it took so many years, till what, 2013? Why did it take so many years for us to find that out? Why was that hidden? You don't hide things unless you are ashamed and you've done something wrong and you are looking maybe of other people's impression. But people don't normally hide things when there's nothing to hide. You normally do things in the darkness that you don't want seen, right? So that goes along with this. Why did it take them over a decade, 15 years, 14 years, or almost 15 now, and why did it take them that long to tell the truth that they did find enough evidence to indict John and Patsy Ramsey? So, do you think it was the pull because of Lynn Wood being the attorney and the fact that John Ramsey was a part of Lockheed Martin, which Lynn Wood also represented? And so I just want to ask, why do you think it was hidden? I mean, obviously you were hiding it for a reason, but why? That makes me also go back to the Patsy, why I'm steering towards Patsy again. Because I think that maybe the money ran out and they couldn't keep everybody quiet forever. So eventually it came out. I want to know what you guys think, and let me know what took so long, with the indictment, and why. Obviously, the grand jury has heard more things that we have. So they were obviously very solid and confident in what they thought to say, yes, I think they should be charged for hurting their child, causing the death of their child. So that's a pretty steep charge, and to hide it is wow. But listen, guys, like I said, I could go on all day. I mean, all day about this. I'm sure I forgot things. I'm going to go to bed tonight and I'll be laying there and wake up and go, oh, that's what I forgot to bring up. That's what I forgot to mention. Just like right now, I just thought of Officer French. I forgot about Steve Thomas telling the story of Officer French, who was the first police officer on scene. And at one point, he looked over at Patsy, and Patsy had been crying. She had her hand over her face, but she was trying to see what he was doing. So she was doing one of these numbers to him to watch what the police officer was doing. That's odd to me. If your baby's missing, why are you the police officer? The whole case is it's what it boils down to me. But sadly, this child was taken way too early, and it's really crazy to think that she would have been what 30 years old this year. Wow. That shows my age. I'm going to bed now, guys. It was good being here making another video, and hopefully I'll be able to get the one out about the speech and the body language soon. And I'm Jill, the private investigator, and I think I'm going to go to bed. I hope you enjoyed this, guys. See you next time.